Hello everybody, welcome to the county seat today. I'm Chad Booth. Today we're going to talk about finding that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. When it comes to public works projects for counties, finding the money to do things that are needed becomes one of the most difficult problems in the world. That is going to be the topic of our show, is how we overcome that hurdle. And we're going to start by looking at a new application designed and implemented by Jones and DeMille Engineering. It's called the Funding Finder. Derek Dowsett has that story.
There's potholes on Main Street, there's dogs roaming around, we have a water problem, so on and so forth. If you're a local government official, you have to trust people that have done things that they've always done before. So you'll go to a public works director and we'll find that they go to the same pot of money that they went to 5 years before because that's what worked for them.
There is no shortage on demands for infrastructure within a community. The challenge being finding the funding, and the other challenge, all the other communities competing for those same dollars. The pot of money that worked several years ago, well, it may be empty. So now where do you look?
Most people, of course, know to get there by Google, but if you tried to search things like, I'm a county and I have a water problem and I need a grant, your number of results are kind of overwhelming and sometimes misleading, and sometimes will send you down paths that can be not as helpful as others.
Jones and DeMille Engineering saw this challenge and leveraged their own expertise on these same types of projects to create a website that serves as an aggregator of funding sources, aptly named Funding Finder.
We just wanted to help find a way for communities to connect their problem with the correct solution so they don't waste time going down the wrong path or only looking at one path. Here's a program for affordable housing, and here's a summary of a program for your airport, and here's one for street trees. And this helps, but it doesn't help that much. It's kind of like you're back in Google. So we have a way of searching directly if you know what you're looking for, or you can just click on the type. So for our example, we'll just use water problem and say it's a drinking water, and say I'm a county. There were 2 pages of that. Well, now I just got rid of a whole page of options. These are ones the counties can get to. So I'm looking at, 11 of them, but say I don't have enough for a loan, I need it to be a grant. So you can see I went from 9 down to 5 programs that are probably connected to what I'm looking for.
Now, finding a source for a loan or grant is really just the first step forward. As you can imagine, there will be competition anywhere offering access to money.
Everybody's chasing them, and that's going to be an ongoing thing, and we think that they will continually become more competitive for these different sources. So you need to make sure as a local government that your ask, so to speak, is very well thought out, it's planned out, it's justified. But again, if you can make the ask smaller because you've got a partnership, we believe that is the way forward. It's just good governance, and it's good strategic partnerships that'll help you move where you're really trying to go.
For the county seat, I'm Derek Dowsett.
You know, it really is kind of like a pot of gold, Derek. I'm just really impressed with that. We'll talk to the creators of that and some of the people who have made use of the Funding Finder and some of these pots of gold when we come back on the county seat. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about finding that funding for those big projects. We are going to talk to people who are on both sides of that equation. Joining us as the state conservation engineer is Bronson Smart. We have Keith Heaton, who is the Director of Community Development for the state of Utah. Brian Barton, who is the engineer that has put all of this coordinating together from Jones and DeMille. And Bruce Adams joins us from way down in the bottom corner of the county, San Juan County Commissioner. Thank you all for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to start with this idea. 100 years ago, when the story setting for the Music Man was there, the city council would get together at River City and they'd decide to build a library. And they'd get a couple of people in town together and they'd raise a little bit of money and they'd build it. But it doesn't work like that anymore because things are bigger and more complex. How big of a challenge is it for communities to be able to actually build the kinds of infrastructure projects that they need nowadays?
I guess I'll start off, Chad. We've been working on a project in the northern part of the county in Spanish Valley for quite a number of years, more than 2 or 3 years, because we have residents down there, about 260 residents, who each had their own well, and then right close to that well, they had a septic tank for their wastewater, and they were uphill from Moab, so we could see a lot of problems developing there. So we decided as a county we would try and help them solve that problem. And it took a lot of coordination with a lot of people and a lot of agencies, including the wastewater people, the water resource people, and as well as the CIB. State Institutional Trust Lands were a partner in this. Jones and DeMille were our engineers, and we now have a real nice infrastructure project that supplies water from a deep well in that area, and also allows those people to use their shallow wells for irrigation around their homes. And we have a sewer system that flows into the brand new sewer plant in Moab. We put new surface on roads for those people to get them out of the dust and so forth. And it was overall nearly a $15 million project. So it wasn't easy to put the thing together, but we accomplished it with the help of all of those people who wanted to help us with the funding and make the project successful.
Okay. Keith, as the Community Development Director for the state of Utah, how important is it from a state level to engage with the local counties and local communities to make this stuff happen?
Yeah, not at all. It really does take a village. You know, as Commissioner Adams was talking and you were talking, Chad, I thought back 25 years ago when I started. I was with the Community Development Block Grant Program, or CDBG as it's commonly known. You know, and a few $1,000s would do a lot of these projects. And now, as we're talking about Spanish Valley, you know, it's 15 million. And it's not uncommon for us in the CIB to see projects in the $1 million range. So the cost of these things just keeps getting more and more expensive. And it does. It takes everyone working together. You know, you talk about Spanish Valley, you've got San Juan County and Grand County have to work together if you're going to get the sewage from San Juan County into Grand County. And I hope no one takes offense at that statement. But no,
I'm sure somebody will read that the wrong way, Keith.
It is uphill. You know, so yeah, it really does. And the important thing is the community engagement. It really does start with your community leaders. And oftentimes community leaders are elected officials, but not necessarily. Any citizens that's passionate about making improvements needs to get involved and help bring all of these funding sources together and the different resources that we have available.
How compromised would the state be? You're the conservation engineer. How compromised would the state be if we couldn't pool resources to make some of these infrastructure developments?
Yeah, as a federal agency, I work for NRCS and USDA, and so we have to have that local connection. There has to be that local group, that local stakeholders that brings a project together from its infancy, and then finds a group to then pool a little money or some resources together at the local level to start that planning out. And that's what we like to see with projects that come to us, is we like to see something that's been thought out and stewed over for a little while so that we know it's a good project and that there's other agencies involved. And it takes the federal, the state, and the local governments working together, but that really starts at that local stakeholder level, those people who are interested.
How is it that Jones and DeMille got so far involved in the funding chase for this?
That's a great question, Chad. You know, Jones and DeMille, we've been serving primarily rural areas in the state of Utah for 38 years now. And we quickly realized that the community leaders, the elected officials, they are not necessarily trained infrastructure professionals who have a deep background in how to make projects happen. Every community has a need or a list of needs, and some communities a very long list of needs. And it really does, as we've talked about already, it takes a village of funding agencies to pull something like this together. So it's really been a cumulative effort through the decades of experience of the company. Just hearing about the needs of each community and being responsive to that. There are so many funding opportunities out there. And so the idea with the Funding Finder website is really just to create a library where folks can go and see what's out there.
You know, one year I foolishly purchased a print version, this is a number of years ago, of the federal grants program. And it was very small type, and it was 2 volumes, each one about this high, and all it was a listing of grants available. How do you wade through all of that?
Chad, the county can't do it. They can't do it alone. They got to have help. We could never get anything done without the help of engineers like Jones and DeMille and community development people and NRCS and USDA. All of these people have to be part of the puzzle for a project to really be able to be successful. And so if everybody's not willing to work together, you're just not going to get anything done.
It's a very complicated puzzle, and it takes a lot of experience to figure it out. Yes, it can be done at the local, the county level, the city level, but the level of efficiency drops significantly. So I guess that's the idea, is to capitalize on lessons learned throughout the state and beyond to help the communities.
We're going to take a quick break on the county seat. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the county seat, both those here in the studio and those from clear across the state. We're continuing our conversation about how you get funding for those big projects at the county and local level. I'm sitting here looking at this list of, and this is the short list of available monies from CIB, DIQ, wastewater, drinking water. They're just NRCS, USDA, FEMA, UDOT, Bureau of Reclamation. I mean, the list just goes on and on. How do you sort through all of this and figure out what a project can use and what they can't?
It is overwhelming, especially for rural elected officials. You know, in many of these communities, you've got a couple volunteers, including the mayor. And so it is almost impossible. You know, under the Division of Housing and Community Development, we have several dozen different funding sources that we have. Just in community development, we have over a half dozen. So there are a lot of moving pieces there. We rely heavily on the Association of Governments. We have regional planners in each association that work with the community. We like to call them our boots on the ground to help them sort through that. And obviously tools and other resources from the engineering firms help with that as well. And so, yeah, it does take a lot to bring together these big projects, but there are resources available.
You know, I was thinking about this, you know, Bronson, are we in a different spot in different parts of the country? I mean, you think FEMA and, you know, you think hurricanes, but FEMA in Utah, do the available grants, are they regional at all? Do you have to sort through that, or is it just kind of a standard block of money on the federal side?
Yeah, each agency treats those differently, and that's the real neat thing about this application or website that Jones and Mills developed, is it drills you down into some of the most commonly used funding sources in Utah, and that's what I'd like to talk about. It's just that if you're going to pull off a large infrastructure project in one of your communities, to talk to a neighboring community that's been through a similar situation, you know, connecting those dots and figuring out which programs really apply to their situation. So we have disaster programs that help after a wildfire or a flood. We have watershed projects that take care of flood control and irrigation piping and secondary water or municipal water storage for communities. So there's all sorts of these opportunities, and NRCS actually has 20 offices throughout the state in the 29 counties, and so those local offices also are a good place to go if you need some assistance in rural Utah.
Brian, what motivated you to take because I know building a website and particularly working on an application is really resource intensive. What motivated Jones and DeMille to do this?
Really, we're motivated to just try to make the quality of life better in any area that we serve, and so we recognize the complexity of the discussion here. You know, we've heard about infrastructure project types from one end of the spectrum to the other, small to massive, and even internally, as we have engineers who are learning how to deliver projects and help our communities move forward, we felt we needed to create this library of options that drills down into the different project types, whether it's recreation, transportation, drinking water, wastewater, whatever it is. These entities can click there and be directed.
Was there a tendency for people to feel like they were continually reinventing the same wheel every time a community would go to a project?
Definitely, yeah. There was a lot of lost motion, a lot of relearning the same things over and over again, and the communities, the local governments are extremely hungry to know how to solve their own problems.
And that was a question I was going to ask you, Bruce. Does this website make it so that you as a county, you and Mac and the other two commissioners can kind of get together and say, geez, we really would like to do this, and you can just kind of go shopping around in the early planning stages to see if it's even feasible?
Absolutely. Anytime you have a project come up, you're always short of funds. I don't care which county you are, which city you are, you're always looking for some funds to help you with a project. So a tool like this is virtually invaluable. I live in a real small community, only 1,800 people, and we're kind of a farming community. So we really rely on NRCS and USDA. The farmers and ranchers use every program that they probably offer. And anytime we have infrastructure projects, of course, we're interested in what CIB can do to help, because we are a mineral producing county. But a lot of these applications, you need somebody with some technical knowledge. So it's imperative that you have an engineering firm that can help you fill out the applications and drop the plans and come up with the cost estimates. So again, it's just a team effort. And as a county commission, we're looking for help every time we turn around, no matter what kind of project we have.
Have you ever used this app? Or, I mean, in the time that it's been up, and just gone in and said, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And you looked at it and you say, well, heck, there's no way we can do that. There's no money for it.
Well, the app that we've been using is inside of Brian Barton's head for the last 10 years. It's this app is really, really new for us, and we haven't had a major project since they developed the funding finder. But it's been the help of Jones and DeMille and some of the other people throughout the state, including SITLA and CIB and just everybody together to pull together enough funding. In fact, I don't want to leave out UDOT, because they've been very helpful on a lot of our road projects and bridge projects in San Juan County as well.
And you have a lot of them that need to be done. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back with our final thoughts. This has been a very interesting conversation. We'll be back after this commercial break. Welcome back to the county seat. We're having a conversation about finding money for those big projects. This has been a really informative half hour with this conversation about this new concept that Jones and DeMille is working on, of getting, as Bruce said, getting all of this application out of Brian's head and onto a computer. Final thoughts.
I guess my thought would be there is money out there. There's hope for people if they just are able to put together some small amounts of information and come to agencies with projects that they have that they can happen. So,
You know, Chad, we all love Utah. We love the people of Utah. This is a wonderful state with great people doing amazing things, and we want to support them so that they can be successful in their community. And that looks a little bit different for every community. You know, and so tools like this, you know, we don't pay favorite states, even though we love Brian and Jones and DeMille. We love all of our engineers and service providers, but we want those communities and those individuals to be successful. And so our doors are open. Let us help you find the money you need to do these projects, to have your community be what you want it to be.
Brian, can anybody access this program?
Yeah, the website is free. It's open to anybody. Consultants are welcome to use it. Any community, city, county, special district, community group. There's so many options as far as funding categories there that it would be interesting and useful for about anybody interested in developing infrastructure.
Bruce, do you think this is going to do anything to move your next project along a little easier?
Oh, absolutely. It'll really help because it puts everything into one place where you can access the information on all of the available funding sources. So it's going to be extremely helpful.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember that if you're curious about your community, even if you just live there and you want your county or community to build something, you can hop on there and see if it's possible. How do they find the site, Brian?
It's just funding.jonesandemille.com.
Excellent. Thank you all for taking the time to join us, literally and virtually, Bruce. And we thank you for tuning in each week. Remember, local government is where your life happens, and this really should make some exciting things happen. And we'll look for you next week on The County Seat. Thank you for watching The County Seat. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications to keep up to date on the program and happenings around Utah.